Well, our final poet is Jane Hirshfield. And Jane is that rare lyric poet that never fell for the romance of the self. Even in her earliest poems, she's in mindful relation to the larger creature world. Now, in her new book, I'm basically paraphrasing, but the day asks the poet, what can you do? What can you answer to change my falling fracture? And at the end of the poem, the poet wakes without an answer, and a voice says, what does the voice say? The voice says, don't despair of this falling world, not yet. At least I gave you the asking. And that is the title of her new, sumptuous, new and selected. It's got 10 selection of her 10 previous books and new poems. Jane is obviously a wonderful poet, and she's a wonderful friend. She's read for us so many times, and we are so grateful to have her bring us home in this 29th annual Watershed. Jane Hirshfield.
Deep thanks to Joyce, to Richard, to the entire Watershed team, to all of you out here in the heat, to the people in the booths. Let us dedicate this last reading to the people in Florida and North Carolina and everywhere between, because we today are feeling climate change. This is the reality of climate change. But how soft is a mere 100-degree day compared to what so many of our friends are going through? So I will begin, I guess, with the poem that Richard was just alluding to, the title poem of the new book. The title comes from the last two words of it. Background. I do an incredibly ridiculous deep cleaning every New Year's Eve to finish the year. The next morning to start the year, I always write a poem. Many of them never see the light of day, some do. This was one of those. This was written January 2021, which you will remember was that last election was supposedly over, but we could feel January 6th coming. Counting New Year's morning, what powers yet remain to me? The world asks, as it asks daily, and what can you make, can you do to change my deep broken, fractured? I count this first day of another year, what remains? I have a mountain, a kitchen, 2 hands. Can admire with 2 eyes the mountain, actual, recalcitrant, shuffling its pebbles, sheltering foxes and beetles. Can make black-eyed peas and collards. Can make from last year's late ripening persimmons a pudding. Can climb a stepladder, change the bulb in a track light. For years, I woke each day first to the mountain, then to the question. The feet of the new sufferings followed the feet of the old, and still they surprised. I brought salt, brought oil to the question, brought sweet tea, brought postcards and stamps for years each day, something. Stone did not become apple. War did not become peace. Yet joy still stays joy, sequins stays sequins, words still bespangle, bewilder. Today I woke without answer. The day answers, unpockets a thought as though from a friend. Don't despair of this falling world, not yet. Didn't it give you the asking? So I am now back to writing postcards every day. I've got a new batch. All the ones up until now were about encouraging people to register. Now we've moved over to encouraging people in swing states to vote. So since this is an environmental poetry festival, I thought for my next poem I would give you a poem which seems to have become something of an anthem in the environmental movement. It is a poem imagining the future, looking back on us and knowing how it turned out. It is a poem that completely hopes to make itself meaningless, that in 150 years, if somebody were to stumble across it, they would just shake their head and say, "What was she so worried about?" Let them not say. Let them not say, "We did not see it. We saw." Let them not say, "We did not hear it. We heard." Let them not say, "They did not taste it. We ate. We trembled." Let them not say, "It was not spoken, not written." We spoke. We witnessed with voices and hands. Let them not say, "They did nothing." We did not enough. Let them say, as they must say something, "A kerosene beauty. It burned." Let them say we warmed ourselves by it, read by its light, praised, and it burned. So this next poem, oh, I don't write clappers, you don't have to clap. I write weepers, I write silencers, I don't write clappers. This next poem covers a lot of ground and a lot of grief. Not all the ground it covers is grief. It's got things like evolution in it. It's got the geomorphology of how Florida's land was formed. It also has in it the Syrian civil war and terrorism and the International Space Station and the Gulf of Mexico and its fishes. And at the end it has in it something that was going on for many years at the time I wrote this poem. It is not that new a poem, and it is still going on, the crisis of refugees in the Mediterranean. Day beginning with seeing the International Space Station and a full moon over the Gulf of Mexico and all its invisible fishes. None of this had to happen. Not Florida, not the ibis's beak, not water, not the horseshoe crab's empty body, and not the living starfish. Evolution might have turned left at the corner and gone down another street entirely. The asteroid might have missed. The seams of limestone need not have been susceptible to sand and mangroves. The radio might have found a different music. The hips of one man and the hips of another might have stood beside each other on a bus in Aleppo and recognized themselves as long-lost brothers. The key could have broken off in the lock. and the nail can refused its lid. I might have been the fish the brown pelican swallowed. You might have been the way the moon kept not setting long after we thought it would, long after the sun was catching inside the low wave curls coming in at a certain angle. The light might not have been eaten again by its moving. If the unbearable were not weightless, we might yet buckle under the grief of what hasn't changed yet. Across the world, a man pulls a woman from the water from which the leapt from overfilled boat has entirely vanished. From the water pulls one child, another. Both are living, and both will continue to live. This did not have to happen. No part of this had to happen. No wind, no rain. No wind, no rain. The tree just fell, as a piece of fruit does. But no, not fruit, not ripe, not fell. It broke. It shattered. One cone's addition of resinous cell sap, one small-bodied bird arriving to tap for a beetle. It shattered. What word, what act was it we thought did not matter? Well, since I dropped them, I brought two poems written since the book, because why not? And since I dropped them, I'll read either one or both. These are poems that, even though earlier poems published have, the Arctic has started burning in recent years, but the last 2 years, the forest fires, the Canadian boreal forests have been burning and burning. And that smoke doesn't come to us, it goes to the East Coast, it goes to Spain, it goes everywhere. This poem has that in it, and again, a lot of other things in it. And some of you may remember that long ago, for a long time living in Sausalito, was the poet and painter Etel Adnan. Then she, okay, we got some happy nods. She ended up, she ended her life, I think, at age 100 in Paris with her first major solo art show at the Guggenheim Museum on the way. So I knew Etel only tinily. I was a very young poet when she was living there, and I was way too shy to try to make friends with her. But I came across last summer a quote of hers that I just liked, and it turned into this poem. The mountain we share is Mount Tamalpais. And if you like numbers, I will tell you that here on Earth, so that's from a letter that she sent to a friend. I wake thinking about a woman with whom I once shared a mountain. If you, as she did, like numbers, I can tell you that here on Earth, this day, it is 55 degrees, a June 9th, uncommonly cold. I can tell you that for company now, this day, you have roughly 8 billion living kin. I can tell you that since the species beginning, 117 billion have breathed in, out, and in again then, at least once. That worldwide this day, 1 person in 7 is hungry. Yes to the sirens. There should always be sirens to remind us. Maybe there is some rescue possible. The sirens mean that there is a catastrophe, and it means somebody is trying to fix it a little. That worldwide this day, 1 person in 7 is hungry. That 32 countries are listed as zones in conflict. That Beirut, where the woman was born, is called past the brink. If you like numbers, I can tell you a single great blue heron flew earlier by a 10-windowed alcove. That in Canada, 10.6 million acres burned today, still unchecked, though this morning the smoke has moved elsewhere, its parts per millions returning their color to 2 big wings folded up in a tree. I can tell you, conceived yesterday, something like 385,000 babies, and that tomorrow, 158,000, all ages, will probably die. There is also this to consider about numbers. The way that the more a life's counted, the less that life seems to count. I can tell you that 1 person born in Beirut, dead in Paris, for a time shared with me a mountain in California she never forgot. I can tell you its colors inside her paintings still astonish. Mountain, 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 kept saying her brush. Okay, I think we have time for just one more poem. Which should it be? Okay, one slightly longer and one short one. 2.5 minutes, I should be able to do that if I don't say too much. The first slightly longer one is a poem about mosses that grow in the Mojave Desert, not a place one thinks of as being amenable to mosses, and yet life is so resilient and ingenious, a niche has been found. So the epigraph from the New York Times science piece about these mosses: in the Mojave Desert, a translucent crystal offers bryophytes much needed respite from the heat of the sun. For hypolithic mosses, it seems, 4% of daylight is right. They live, the headline says, by sheltering under a parasol of translucent quartz. The crystal scatters the light's ultraviolet, dilutes its heat, traps the night's condensed moisture to moss-sized rain. I think of these mosses and consider, perhaps we too are mosses, evolving to the parch of our self-made Mojaves, unable to bear the full brightness, the full seeing, to recognize fully the Amazon burning, the Arctic burning, the monarch's smoke-colored missing migration, an experiment not meant to last. And yet, we found shelter within it. We pondered our lives and the lives of others, thirsted, slept, to the implausible green of existence, for better, for worse. We offered our 4% portion of praises. For better, for worse, our 4% portion of comprehension. So I've begun to be translated a fair bit, and I learned something, which is in the Czech Republic, they don't know for better, for worse as part of the marriage vow. And so, you know, he sends me a little email. Well, what's that all about? And I said, oh, anyone in America knows it's what you say in at a wedding. And he said, And I said, good luck. So the last poem. I open the window. What I wanted wasn't to let in the wetness that can be mopped, nor the cold. There are blankets. What I wanted was the siren, the thunder, the neighbor, the fireworks, the dog's bark. Which of them didn't matter? Yes, this world is perfect, all things as they are. But I wanted not to be the one sleeping soundly on a soft pillow, clean sheets, untroubled, dreaming there still might be time, while this everywhere crying. Thank you, Watershed.